Michael, it's really great to talk to you today. Congratulations on Freediver.
Thank you, Manny. Appreciate that.
It's really nice to meet you. Tell me a little bit about, getting to know Alexey because he seems like quite the incredible person.
Yeah, Alexei is not a normal person. You don't become what is he, 20, 30 time world champion of anything well, by being a normal person. He's a really unusual character. They call him the machine. He has an incredible ability to block out the noise and focus on what he's after. He's got great command of his body, his mind, and he's the greatest living freediver in the world. And so getting to know him was great. I mean, he's very approachable at the same time. He almost has like a kid-like charm to him. For someone who's so like focused and like just mind-blowingly impressive, he's kind of like goofy and like likes weird memes on his, he'll show you like a weird meme on your phone, on his phone. You're like, okay. So he's complex and so his personality is complex, but his story is even more complex. He's got this incredible mother who kind of puts freediving on the map. And so he is sort of living in her shadow, but also trying to honor her at the same time. And he's also trying to like do better than she ever did as well. And so it's a really complex character to get to unpack. And so that was one of the reasons why I was so excited about making this film. I was like, this character is not typical, and it's going to be tough to represent him in a way that does him justice and is satisfying for the audience. And, I hope we were able to do that with this film.
Yeah, you caught a lot of I'd say nuances, I guess, and moments where you can tell, you can really feel, especially when he's about to go for a dive or he's thinking about one of the dives. Don't want to give too much away, of course. And you can see how much really it almost that kind of legacy of his mom does weigh on him. And
Yeah.
I think it was great storytelling by you guys. How did you come about this project? Because not necessarily your typical sports story that you see out there, which I actually appreciated because I didn't really know
Yeah.
too much about the sport.
Yeah. There was an article in GQ a few years back, and some friends of mine at Boardwalk Pictures over there in Santa Monica reached out to me and they said, "Hey, do you want to make this into a film? Because if you do, we do." And I said, "Okay, let me read it." I read it. I was like, the biological things they're talking about that happens when you free dive. I was like, what? Your heart rate goes to what? Your lungs squish down to the size of an orange or really like a pancake? Like what? And you're almost like near death when you're under the water that deep for that long. It just sounded like, from a scientific level, totally amazing. And then when you unpack the history with his mother and his own history and what he's trying to do, you start to see like, well, this is going to be a really powerful film with a lot of things to unpack in it. And what I really like about our film is we're capturing it live, like as it happens. Some of the other freediving films out there are sort of repurposing old footage and to tell a story. Our film this is a year in competition with the greatest living freediver in the world, who, by the way, when we started making the film, we were just getting started, and Alexei, who's Russian, suddenly gets banned from the sport because Russia invades Ukraine. Alexei is not involved in Russian politics, at least to my knowledge. He's not, but a lot of Russians were getting banned from their sports at that point. Now he's dedicated his life to the sport. He can't compete. At the top of that season, he had 3 world records. By the end of that season, he had 1 left. And Alexei sits back and he goes, "I'm going to come back next year. I'm going to take back my 2 world records and I'm going to add to it. And I'm going to have the most dominant season in the history of one of the deadliest sports on earth." And that's what the sports story is here, is the greatest living freediver having the most dominant season. It's an almost suicidal quest. And so that's the sports story of it. But also, like I said, there's a really strong humanistic side to it. This is a son who was like almost strangely close to his mother. And what does he do with her legacy? Because she's kind of the most revered person in this sport. Simultaneously, it's a sport that you have to travel the world to do. And so he's leaving his son. And so I think a lot of us, I know I deal with leaving my family to do what I do. It's a really hard thing to think about and to do successfully. And shout out to my wife and my child for understanding and supporting me for what I do. But Alexei's going through that on a really, really serious level as well. And Alexei's going to do that every time he leaves his family. He's going to risk his life, right? And it's a known fact he's going to risk his life every time he walks out the door. So how do you make that decision? What decision, like, how do you balance what your own personal ambition, your professional ambition with your personal life? And how do you want to live your life in general? Is sort of what the film's about.
Yeah, I think I've really got those themes because I mean, doing what
Good.
I do, I have to travel to different shows, different movies, different venues, and spending a lot of weekends and things. And when he said that, I started to reflect on it too. It's like, yeah, well, what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing that? But it's what I love
Yeah.
to do, and this is what he loves to do. And I think you guys did really such a good job at putting the layers down of why it really matters, and starting
Good.
with medical stuff because that made me cringe. But
Good.
especially the lungs thing. I held my chest a bit. I was like, oh, I want that. And the idea of knowing that these are the things that would happen as I would go down would be just enough to make me panic and have to
And
step
you can't panic. That's the real thing. It's the
away.
most mental sport I can think of. Because there's no one down there to save you. There's no scuba divers down there because, first of all, they're deeper than scuba divers can really go. Maybe military people with like weird contraptions can go that low, but he's way below what you do as a scuba diver when he's doing it. So there's no one down there to save him when he's 512 feet below the surface of the water with no air. He's on a single breath. And his heartbeat drops to an impossibly, you didn't even know that the heart could go that slow. His lungs are literally collapsing on top of themselves. His ears are about to burst, and his body kind of goes into like a near, like it's dying, and it starts to preserve itself. And so he's also barely conscious while he's 512 feet away from breathable water. And then he has, so he gets down there, and guess what? Oh, now you got to go up, and you're fighting against like it's negative buoyancy. Once you go down like 30 meters, the ocean starts to push you down further. So he's going way, 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 way down. Again, 512 feet, turns around, and he's got to go up. And now he's got to swim against the pressure of the ocean. And eventually he finds the buoyancy again as he gets to the top. But it's an insane sport. And the point is you cannot panic because no one's going to help you. And if you panic, you're going to burn more oxygen. So you have to be a master of your mind to do this sport and your body, but really your mind. It's an incredibly mental sport. And I think when you come back up for air out of that, you're sort of in this euphoric place. And I think that's why a lot of the freedivers do this. I think it's almost like a drug that you can get addicted to, that feeling of coming back out. There's no money in the sport. Alexey's not getting paid to win competitions. He of course has his companies. He's making monofins. He's making suits. He's making money, but not through the sport directly. And that's the big question, is like why. And I think that's one of the reasons why I took on this film, was I wanted to answer why. And for Alexey, it's a really complex answer. It takes me an entire film to explain why to the people. And even after you understand the why, there's another question of like, okay, but is it worth it? And that's sort of what the film is about, is why. And then once you know the why, you're like, okay, but is it worth it?
Yeah, there's no Wheaties box or no commercials in
No.
there for free divers.
There's no
So
Nike sponsorships for free divers.
no. So were you with him during those competitions that we see in the film?
Oh, I was there every frame of the film. Yeah, of course.
So I have to ask you, what was it like for you shooting this, that moment when he blacks out?
It was terrifying. The night before he announced he said he was going to do the night before. That's how the sport works. You have to announce the night before.
Mhm.
Couldn't sleep that night. And then that day happened, and I couldn't sleep that night either. The next night, so I had like multiple sleepless nights around that event. And you know, this is one of those projects, and I've done a couple in my life, where you're profiling someone, you're getting closer to them, you learn who they are, and then you watch them step out into this arena and do something that's so dangerous, and you just want to grab them and pull them back and like, don't do it. And I really felt that a lot on this film. And by the way, like keeping, worrying about him, but also my crew. This is a really challenging technical film to make. We are always out in the middle of the ocean with a
Mhm.
lot of people. I'm talking to 3 different boat captains at the same time. I've got a scuba team down there. I've got a robotics team filming deep, deep stuff. I've got my team above water. I've got PAs and safety divers everywhere. This is a we were really safe. I take safety very seriously, and so do everyone, all the people who were on this film with me. But still, at a certain point, you're out in the middle of the Philippines on a bunch of boats, and a super typhoon's bearing down on you, and it's a bit of a gut check moment. But yeah, it was a really dramatic film. A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of like very immediate anxiety, and not like anxiety I made up for myself. Like, no, this is actually something I should be concerned about.
Yeah, because this is equipment that you're not necessarily using all the time because I mean you're going deep in the ocean, which is not necessarily a ton of films being made that way.
There's a
And
reason. It's really, really hard. I keep talking about this, but I think it's something to point out. I'm pretty sure my film crew and I set our own world record in that first big dive sequence where we're filming him on like cinema level cameras when he hits 512 feet underwater. I think that's the deepest image of a human being in the open ocean ever captured on like a real camera. And even the great James Cameron can't really brag about that. So I'm gonna enjoy that record while I have it. I think it's a true statement that I just said. But like this film is about as hard as it can get to make. It really, really was challenging. And the ocean is no joke. It does what it wants. It doesn't care who you are or what you planned on doing. It's the ocean. And so it was a really, really challenging production. I think my crew for being so strong and so focused and so professional, and everyone came out of this project completely unscathed somehow. And not somehow, we did it because we were really focused on everyone's safety. But it's not normal people who go and take on a film like this, right? You're not normal to do what we just did. Alexey's not normal to do what he does. And I thank my crew for being as weird and as dedicated as I am to following me on this crazy adventure.
But obviously it's worth it because I mean, how often are we going to get that story of him and his mom and kind of a look into the sport if it's not from filmmakers like you who are really taking the risk and taking the time, you don't hear about it, which is why I enjoy speaking with filmmakers like you because that risk is worth it because now it's documented and now it's going to be out for the masses that can see it that otherwise probably wouldn't have.
Yeah, exactly. And freediving's never been shown like this before, right? Like there is some existing films about it, but this is really, you're in the moments with him. This isn't a historical film made out of like found footage. This is us capturing world records happening in impossible places in a way that capturing them in a way that's never been done before. And so it was a challenge. It's one of the reasons why I did it. I read the article and I was like, I don't know how we're going to do this, but I want to figure it out because at this point in my career, I've been doing this for a minute now, and I hope I'm known for sort of taking on a lot of challenging things to pull off. And this one looked like I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this film, but I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to build a team that helps me do that. And they did, and I appreciate my partners for believing in me and giving me the space to go on this adventure and supporting me through the whole process. Shout out to Boardwalk Pictures. Shout out to Skydance, shout out to GQ and Connie Nast, and shout out to Picture Start. Those people got behind me and they said, "Go get him, kid." And I said, "Thank you."
And we talked about one of those really stressful scenes, and I also want to talk about one that's very artistic. And actually, by the time we see it in the film, we have already gotten to know Alexei, and kind of there's a little bit more to it. Tell me about filming him swimming with the whales. I love that scene.
Yeah, I think like everyone talks about that scene, right? Like everyone wants to talk about that scene. So he's of course an incredible athlete. He's the best in the world at this thing, right? But freediving isn't just about world records. In fact, there's a huge other side of it, which is a bit more soulful and spiritual. Feels like it's a weird religious thing. It's really not, but there's a part of humanity that isn't so analytical and like you're kind of feeling things and you're experiencing the world. And Alexei has this incredible ability to hold his breath and swim like an Olympic swimmer would while holding his breath through crazy stuff. And when you have that level of skill set, you can jump in the cold waters off the coast of Mauritius, which is 300 miles east of Madagascar, which is I don't know how many miles east of Africa. We're in the middle of nowhere, And we spent 3 days on a boat with some marine biologists who specialize in this area. There's a pod of sperm whales that most sperm whale pods migrate throughout a year. This pod lives there, but for whatever reason, the conditions in that water, that pod is always off the coast of Mauritius. So we knew if we got there, we'd at least have a pretty good chance of getting in the water with these incredible animals, like prehistoric, like they're like dinosaurs, you know. And Alexey was like giddy. He couldn't wait. Like, you know, he's setting world records. Like he's incredibly focused, but like the whales, he was like, yes, like when we go, like let's go. And so we spent 3 days out on the water. Got incredible footage of him with those whales. He comes out of the water. He can't even, he does this for a living, and he's just like, wow, I can't believe what just happened. These things can kill you with their voice. Like they can make a sound that'll just kill you instantly, right?
Wow.
That's how beastly these things are. They dive so deep and they fight like giant squids, which we've never even seen a giant squid. These things go down there and eat them for breakfast, and Alexei's just swimming with them. But it's actually like a really beautiful and meaningful scene.
Mhm.
It's about him reconnecting with the other side of freediving, and in a weird way, reconnecting with his mother as well.
Yeah, it was very, very well done. Final
Thank you.
question: after all it's all said and done, and spending all this time with Alexey, what was your takeaway for you personally about what you learned from him?
From him,
Yes.
um, I mean, he's a really impressive person. And I think he never really stops. I mean, his nickname is the Machine, and there's a reason for that. And he just pushes through any barriers that are in front of him while being like, he's a very approachable and kind man. He's not, so I think what I took from him is the ability to have this unbreakable drive and also be a kind human being, in all in one person. And then of course he teaches me like what he taught me, like what the human body can do in a way that like I think some of the best doctors in the world don't actually understand some of the physiology of the human body in a way that Alexey does.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff we see in the film, I don't see how it's even possible. So thank you for getting that.
Thank you. This film is like you can't believe your eyes, and it's all completely true. That's the thing about this film is like if someone wrote it, you'd be like, no, that's so fake. It's like, no, this actually happened. I was there. We filmed it for you all to see, and you're not going to believe what you see.
Michael, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me. I appreciate it. I appreciate your film and your, getting to talk to me for a few minutes about it. So thank you
Yeah,
so
man.
much.
Thank you, Manny. Take care, man.